What if a single phone call could have rewritten history? It's a question that sounds like pure fiction, the kind of line you'd hear in the opening scene of a Hollywood film. But for Emma Thompson, this moment was real. It happened in 1990 on a day already etched deep into her memory for an entirely different reason. She was in the middle of filming Primary Colors, a political satire about ambition, charm, and scandal. A story that blurred the lines between politics and performance. But behind the cameras, her personal life was in upheaval. That morning, she had finalized her divorce from Kenneth Branagh, a man she had once been inseparable from both on and off the stage. It was supposed to be just another long day on set, rehearsing lines, filming scenes, hiding personal pain behind professional poise. Yet, in the quiet between takes, in the familiar solitude of her trailer, the phone rang. On the other end was a voice she instantly recognized. A voice that belonged to one of the most famous men in America. A man who, at the time, was known not for politics, but for wealth, luxury, and his ability to command headlines. It was Donald Trump. And he wasn't calling about business, charity, or film. He was calling with an invitation. One that came at the strangest possible time, on the very day her marriage had officially ended. For most people, the story would have been a short anecdote told once and forgotten. But this call would linger in Emma's memory, not because she said yes. In fact, she said no, but because the sheer improbability of it made it unforgettable. And years later, when she finally shared the story with the world, it became one of those what-ifs that the internet loves to obsess over. Because if she had accepted, if she had taken him up on his offer, some people wonder whether it could have altered the course of her life, and maybe even American history. In the late 1990s, Emma Thompson was a figure who seemed to embody both artistic excellence and grounded humanity. She wasn't just another Hollywood starlet. She was a writer, thinker, a performer whose intelligence was as much a part of her appeal as her talent. By 1998, she had already won an Academy Award for Best Actress in Howard's End and an Academy Award for Best Adapted Screenplay for Sense and Sensibility, making her one of the rare individuals to win Oscars for both acting and writing. She was, in every sense, a creative force. But away from the spotlight, her personal life had been quietly unraveling. Her marriage to Kenneth Branagh had been one of the most admired partnerships in the entertainment industry. They had been celebrated, not just for their work together, but for the way they seemed to represent a kind of modern, artistic royalty. Image began to crack under the weight of conflicting schedules, relentless public attention, and as the press would later report, Branagh's alleged relationship with another actress. By 1995, they had separated, and by 1998, the divorce was official. Emma was open, in later years, about how painful that period was for her. She described herself as half alive during the breakup, moving through her days with the kind of emotional exhaustion that makes even ordinary interactions feel heavy. Became her refuge. And Primary Colors was no ordinary job. It was a major Hollywood production with an all-star cast, including John Travolta, Kathy Bates, Billy Bob Thornton, and Adrian Lester. The film's script, loosely based on journalist Joe Klein's novel about Bill Clinton's 1992 presidential campaign, was sharp, satirical, and politically charged. For Emma, the role offered a challenge and an escape. She could throw herself into a character who demanded poise, control, and resilience, traits she was trying to reclaim in her own life. On set, she maintained her professionalism. She was gracious with the crew, sharp in rehearsals, and a steadying presence for her fellow actors. But in her trailer, away from the cameras, she allowed herself moments of quiet sipping tea, marking up her script and taking the deep breaths that the day's emotional weight required. It was during one of those moments between scenes when the phone rang. A simple sound, nothing unusual on a busy set. She had no idea that answering it would turn this ordinary afternoon into a story she'd still be telling decades later, because on the other end of the line, history, or at least a very strange footnote to it, was waiting. To understand the emotional weight of that day for Emma Thompson, you have to understand what her marriage to Kenneth Branagh meant, not just to her, but to an entire generation of film lovers. In the late 1980s, Branagh was being hailed as the new Laurence Olivier, a wunderkind actor-director whose Shakespearean adaptations were winning critical praise around the world. Emma Thompson was his equal in every way, a luminous performer with razor-sharp wit and a gift for bringing complex characters to life. They met in 1987 while working on the television miniseries Fortunes of War. The chemistry was instant, both on and off camera. Within 2 years, they were married, and by 1989, they were the golden couple of British theater and film. Together, they starred in Branagh's Henry V, a sweeping romantic war epic that not only earned them both acclaim, but cemented their partnership as one of the most creative in the industry. Throughout the early 90s, they seemed inseparable. They appeared side by side at premieres, collaborated on ambitious Shakespeare adaptations like Much Ado About Nothing, and brought a rare blend of intellect and glamour to the entertainment world. For audiences, they weren't just actors. They were a storybook pairing, a proof that art and love could flourish together. But behind the red carpet smiles, the pressures of fame were beginning to take their toll. Their schedules were relentless. Separate projects often kept them apart for weeks or months at a time. Rumors began to surface in the tabloids, whispers that Branagh had grown close to another actress. Neither Emma nor Kenneth publicly fed the gossip, but the speculation didn't fade. By 1995, the separation was official. Still, they remained professional when their paths crossed in the industry, avoiding public bitterness. Emma later spoke candidly about the pain she endured during those years. She described the breakup as utterly bewildering, admitting that she had poured so much of herself into the marriage, that she wasn't sure who she was without it. When the divorce was finalized in 1990, it closed a chapter that had defined nearly a decade of her life. For Emma, the end was bittersweet, a relief in some ways, but also a stark reminder of how much had changed since those first euphoric years together. It wasn't just personal. The media had followed every turn of their relationship, turning their romance into a kind of public property. Even the split became a subject of fascination, analyzed in gossip columns and dissected in interviews. Constant attention had left its mark. By the time the papers were signed, Emma was determined to reclaim her privacy, to keep her focus on her work, and to avoid unnecessary distractions, which is why what happened next, just hours after her marriage was legally over, felt so strange, so intrusive, and yet so oddly cinematic. She had been trying to close one chapter quietly, with as little public spectacle as possible. But with the ring of a phone, another headline-ready moment was already waiting in the wings, and it was about to involve someone whose public persona was the polar opposite of the life she wanted in that moment, a man whose fame thrived on spectacle. That man was Donald Trump. In 1990, Donald Trump was a household name, but not yet a political figure. He was, above all else, a brand, a living emblem of wealth and self-promotion. By then, Trump Tower had been standing tall on Fifth Avenue for over 15 years, its gold-tinted glass and marble interiors reflecting his taste for grandeur. His name was stamped across casinos in Atlantic City, golf resorts in Florida, and skyscrapers in Manhattan. To many Americans, Trump meant opulence, the promise of exclusivity, and the image of a man who always won. He was a constant presence in tabloids. If he wasn't making headlines for a new business deal, it was for his personal life, the glamorous women he dated, the celebrity events he attended, the splashy divorces that kept gossip magazines in business. His split from Ivana Trump in 1992 had been a media circus, and his subsequent marriage to actress Marla Maples only added to the fascination. By the late 90s, he and Maples had separated, and once again, he was a bachelor in the public eye. Television appearances kept his profile high. He was a regular on talk shows, occasionally making cameos in films like Home Alone 2 or Zoolander. Trump understood the camera, knew how to command attention, and cultivated an aura of confidence that, depending on who you asked, was either magnetic or arrogant. At the time, there were no political rallies, no campaign speeches, just the steady churn of Trump-celebrity-mogul. He was someone you might expect to run into at a Manhattan gala, not on the set of a politically charged Hollywood film. Yet, when he heard that Emma Thompson was in Los Angeles, he decided to make contact. It's unclear exactly how he got the number to her trailer, maybe through mutual acquaintance, maybe through industry connections that few could trace. What is certain is that the call came directly from him, and the invitation was personal. This was a man used to getting yeses, a man accustomed to walking into a room and having the room bend toward him. When he picked up the phone that day, he probably didn't expect hesitation, let alone refuse. From his perspective, it might have seemed like perfect timing. Two high-profile people, both recently single, both well-known in their respective worlds. Dinner could have been just dinner, or the start of something more headline-worthy. From Emma's perspective, the timing couldn't have been worse. Set of Primary Colors was alive with energy. Directed by Mike Nichols, the production was packed with talent. John Travolta playing a charismatic Southern governor, Kathy Bates as the hard-hitting political operative, Billy Bob Thornton bringing a sly edge to the campaign team. The story was loosely based on Bill Clinton's 1992 presidential run, with all the intrigue, charm, and scandal that entailed. Emma played a character inspired by Hillary Clinton, bringing her trademark intelligence and subtlety to the role. Filming days were long and intense. Between takes, crew members hustled to adjust lighting, fix wardrobe details, and reset props. The hum of generators, the shuffle of footsteps on set, the occasional burst of laughter when someone flubbed a line, it all blended into the unique rhythm of a movie in progress. For Emma, her trailer was the one place she could step away from that rhythm. A tidy space with a small sofa, a makeup mirror rimmed with warm bulbs, and a desk where her script sat open, annotated with handwritten notes. That day, she had more than acting on her mind. The divorce papers she'd signed earlier were still fresh in her thoughts. The reality of it was still sinking in. She was, as she later put it, emotionally low-voltage present enough to do the work, but keeping the world at arm's length. When the phone rang, it was just another sound in a day full of noise. She lifted the receiver without thinking. Hi, it's Donald Trump. For a moment, she thought someone was playing a joke. B. Travolta had set it up. A crew member with a sense of humor had patched in a friend, but the voice was unmistakable, calm, confident, certain of itself. Trump wasted no time. He told her he'd heard she was in town filming nearby, and thought it would be fun if they had dinner together. Not just any dinner, he mentioned. One of his properties, painting a picture of an evening in luxury, good food, fine wine, maybe even an overnight stay if she wanted. Emma listened, half amused, half baffled. She had just signed her divorce papers that morning. The emotional gap between where she was and where this invitation was coming from felt almost absurd. Trump kept talking, his tone light but self-assured, as though this sort of proposal was entirely ordinary. For him, it probably was. For her, it was a surreal intrusion into a day that had already been heavy with change. She'd been playing a fictional first lady on set, navigating fictional political drama, and now here was a real-life tabloid icon offering her a seat in his world. When he finally paused, she had her chance to respond. Emma thanked him politely, but said no. She kept her tone warm, professional, the kind of refusal that left no doubt, but also no unnecessary sting. Trump seemed taken aback, not hostile, Not offended, just surprised. It wasn't a reaction he was used to. He told her she was missing out on a great evening. She smiled though. Of course, he couldn't see it, and wished him well. The call ended quickly after that. She set the receiver down and sat for a moment, the corners of her mouth lifting in disbelief. It was so strange, so wildly out of step with the rest of her day, that it felt almost like a scene she might find in a satirical script. Emma didn't share the story widely at the time, but in 2017, during a TV interview, she brought it up casually. The audience leaned in as she described filming in Los Angeles. Fresh from her divorce and getting a call from Donald Trump, she recalled thinking it was probably a joke, then realizing it wasn't. She admitted she'd called it kind of stalking in jest. And then she delivered the line that guaranteed headlines. If I had accepted, it could have changed the course of American history. The clip spread online. News outlets picked it up. Social media is filled with jokes, memes, and wild speculation. Had she said yes, the 1998 tabloids would have gone into overdrive. Would it have been a one-off dinner? Possibly. Could it have become a short-lived romance? Maybe. Would it have been resurrected in every Trump profile during the 2016 election? The idea is irresistible because it sits in that space between absurdity and possibility, the place where what if lives in reality. Emma Thompson went on to have the career she wanted, acclaimed roles, writing credits, and advocacy work. She married actor Greg Wise, built a family, and maintained her reputation as one of the most respected figures in film. A call from Donald Trump, a bizarre footnote in a remarkable life, but it's also proof that sometimes the wildest plots aren't written in script. Sometimes they arrive on the other end of a phone, unannounced, with a voice you recognize instantly.